5 days after he crossed the graduation stage at Carlo High, Leo Czarnecki came home from a night shift to find his life packed into 2 milk crates and an army duffel on the porch, and the locks already changed. He was 18. He had a 1991 Cavalier with 161,000 miles on it, $164 in folded bills, and a brass key on a cracked leather fob out of his dead father's cigar box. Then a sheriff's sale list went up on the laundromat corkboard, and one name near the bottom stopped him cold. The Meteor, a drive-in theater out on the River Road that had not run a picture in 3 summers. Bidding opened at $100, and nobody so much as coughed. The whole town agreed the boy had thrown away $27 on a dead man's weed lot. But every padlock on that property gave way to the manager's ring except one. The projection booth, a steel door at the top of a steel stair, would not answer to any key in the county. And the night he finally slid his father's brass key into that lock, it turned over smooth and heavy, like the tumblers had been waiting 10 years for the boy to come home. He came up the walk smelling of cardboard and floor wax from the overnight at Value King and saw his own boots in the top crate, laces tied together the way his mother tied things, and the cigar box sitting square on the duffel, and he understood. His mother came to the door but did not open the screen. "Rick and I have been talking," she said. "You're 18 now, honey. Cody and Bryce can't keep sharing a room forever. It's just time. What you do with my room already? You've always been the easy one. You'll be fine. You're always fine." She said it like a compliment, the way she had said it his whole life, meaning he was the child who could be set down anywhere and would not cry about it. From the kitchen came his stepfather's voice, even and unbothered. "His dad's stuff is in the box, all of it, so there's no discussion later." Inside were his father's wristwatch, hands stopped at 4:40 behind a cracked crystal, a photograph of a young man leaning on a steel rail, squinting into the sun, and the key, old brass on a fob worn soft as cloth, pressed with letters he had traced 100 times, Meteor, and under it, Booth. His mother had only ever said your dad had odds and ends from before we met. "Mom," he said, "where do you figure I sleep tonight?" "Don't make it ugly, Leo," she said, and shut the door, and the new deadbolt went over, a lock his key had never met. He did not cry, because crying belonged to a kid who still lived there, and he did not live there anymore. The cigar box rode on the passenger seat where a person would sit. The next 6 nights he slept in the Cavalier behind the dead gatehouse at the Amber Line Works, quiet since the mill closed in October of 1983, and took 4,100 jobs down the river with it. And a car gets cold at 3 in the morning there, even in June. Gas at $1.87. Phone minutes, a fan belt. By the 6th morning he had $91 and a clear understanding that $91 was not a plan. He ate one real meal that week, at Rona's lunch across from the mill gate, coffee and a cup of mushroom and rye soup. When he went to pay, Sophie Rona pushed his dollar back with one finger. "I can pay," Leo said, because it mattered to say it. "I know you can. Someday you'll be sitting there doing good, and a fellow will come in looking the way you look right now. You'll buy his lunch. That's how I keep my books." He did not know yet how much of his life was about to be built out of exactly that. The sale list he found 2 doors down, at the coin laundry. County seal, sheriff's sale, Saturday courthouse steps. Duplexes on Pulaski Street. A panel van. And near the bottom, one line that reached off the corkboard and took hold of him by the collar. Parcel 44081, former drive-in theater, 4 acres, sold as is, commonly known as the Meteor. He read it 3 times, then held the key up to the light. Meteor, Booth. He had no true memory of the place, only a scrap that might have been a dream. Riding his father's shoulders under colored bulbs, and above them a wall of light too big to look at. His father had died in March of 1994, when Leo was 7. Nobody had ever mentioned a drive-in. But those 2 words were the same 2 words, and something in him decided he was going to that auction. Maybe 20 people came to the courthouse steps Saturday, among them a woman in a windbreaker, with a folder marked Corrigan Freight and Storges. The duplexes went for $6,900. Then the auctioneer reached the bottom of the page, and a few men laughed, the way people laugh at a joke the whole county has told before. Somebody behind Leo said, "There goes the ghost lot. 9 4/10 acres. Sold as is, where is. Start me at $100. Nobody moved. 50 then." A pigeon clapped out of the courthouse eve, and that was all the bid the 50 got. 25 then, and I'll thank you kindly. Leo put his hand up. The crowd turned. He felt them take his measure. The second-hand jacket, the tired car, how young he ran. He kept his hand where it was. 25 once, 25 twice. Then the gavel cracked flat. Sold. Son, go see the clerk, and Lord help you. He had spent his whole life being the easy one, and being laughed at was almost restful next to being invisible. The clerk told him 25 for the bid and a $2 recording fee, and he counted out $27 in ones and quarters. "No power out there," she said. "No certified water. Tower's red tagged. Old Sobchak ran it 45 seasons and died in November of 2001 with no will anyone ever found. So you're buying from the county. And there's a demolition review already moving with the commissioners. Corrigan's been at them 2 years about that frontage by the interchange. You bought the taxes, hon. Don't go falling in love. What do they want with it?" "Truck parking," the clerk said, like the words tasted of it, and pushed across a ring of 14 brass padlock keys, none marked. Managers set. Leo felt the little key in his jacket pocket, warm through the denim, though it had no business being warm. He was almost to the car when a voice stopped him. "You the boy that bought Hank's place?" An old man, 75 or better, pressed flannel despite the June morning, a white brush mustache, forearms speckled with dozens of small, pale burn scars. There was no laughing in him anywhere. "I guess I am. Drozd. Casimir Drozd. Folks say Kaz. I ran second machine out there for Hank 31 years. You got family helping you? No. You got money? No. Then you come to it the same way everybody ever came to the Meteor." He wrote a number on a feed store receipt and pressed it into Leo's hand. "Well, water's got iron. Don't drink it till I've run it. I'll be out at 8 tomorrow. Hank would climb out of the ground and come after me otherwise." He walked off without waiting to be thanked. The drive out took 18 minutes, and the town gave up a little more with every one of them. Storefronts thinned to plywood, plywood to fence. Then the river road ran past the Amberline Works, a mile and a half of dead sheds with sumac growing out of the slag bank. The bypass had gone through in 1974 and pulled the traffic. The mill had pulled everything else. Nobody came this way anymore. Nobody but a kid with $27 in the county's pocket and a key he could not explain in his own. The marquee caught him at the turn, rust bleeding from every bolt, a steel arrow that had once chased itself in neon. And in the letter tracks below, with letters gone like teeth, the last message the Meteor had ever spelled. "See you next season under that smaller. Thank you, Carl W." He turned in on gravel gone to chicory and shut the engine off, and the quiet came down, big bottomland quiet with the river under it. A mud dauber's nest sat on the ticket windowsill. The field spread out in 11 long, low waves, the speaker posts standing in rows like an orchard of iron, 178 of them. And when the wind came up the valley, the hollow posts breathed, the whole field humming one low chord. At the center back, the concession block, cinder block gone pale as a robin's egg, carried the projection booth on its roof like a wheelhouse, one small window aimed at the screen. A steel stair bolted to the wall. The screen tower stood at the road end, 62 feet of latticed timber and steel, its plywood face weathered silver, and under it a little merry-go-round stood rusted to lace. Somebody had put a playground under a movie screen. Somebody had expected children, whole carloads of them, and built for them, right there in the grass. And that was when the cat came around the corner. A big gray tom gone thin, one ear torn to a scallop, ribs showing. It sat down square in the gravel and looked at him the way a foreman looks at a new hire, then rose, walked along the building, and 10 feet on looked back over its shoulder, plain as speech. Leo followed. The cat led him to the steel stair, climbed ahead of him, and at the top sat down before a steel door skinned in flaking green paint. It looked at the door, then at Leo, then dragged one paw down the steel, slow, a sound like a match that would not strike. Leo closed his hand around his father's key, and for the first time since his mother shut that door on him, his hands were shaking. The brass chattered against the plate. In the failing light, he could not even find the keyway. Not in the dark, the practical part of him said. That door has waited this long. It will keep till morning. Okay, he told the cat. Okay, tomorrow. That night, he split a gas station ham sandwich with the cat, and the cat lay on the Cavalier's warm hood, facing the road, keeping a watch nobody had asked it to keep. Kaz came at 8 to the minute. You slept in the car, he said, and it was not a question. He handed down water, a work light, a toolbox, and a little generator. She'll run the light and the well pump, so don't get to dreaming. I can't pay you for any of this. Didn't ask you to. Then he saw the cat, and the sorrow in his face gave way to open tenderness. There you are, you old bandit. The cat pushed its head hard into his chest. He's been minding this place since Hank passed, Kaz said. 3 winters. Wouldn't leave it. What's his name? Usher. Hank named him. Said every picture show needs an usher, somebody to walk folks in and see nobody's in the wrong spot. Kaz looked at Leo a moment longer than was comfortable. He brought you to the booth door last night. Straight up the stairs and sat down at it. Kaz did not explain the look on his face. Come on, you ought to see what you bought. He cut the chain, and light went into the concession building for the first time in 3 winters. A serving counter, a cold popcorn machine, dust like gray felt, a glass sugar dispenser with the sugar gone hard as quartz, and behind the register, painted high in red letters faded but holding, Leo read 6 words. Nobody watches from the road. He painted that himself summer of '63, Kaz said. Folks used to pull off on the berm and watch over the fence with no sound, to save the dollar. It shamed Hank worse than it shamed them. He'd walk out and wave them through the gate, every car, every time. That was the entire trouble with Hank Sobchak. He meant it. Hank had built the Meteor with mill wages and his own hands. He had a boy, Teddy, raised in that booth the way other kids are raised in kitchens. In the spring of 1968, the Army sent Teddy home for the last time. And after that season, Hank ran the projector himself every night. The Meteor was open, rain or clear, for 33 more years. Behind the register hung a painted chalkboard ruled into columns, Goodfrit lettered across the top, half of it still carrying names and little sums, the ghosts of 1,000 older marks beneath. Here's what the town knew and the county never did, Kaz said. Mill went down in '83, 4,000 men. That next summer, and the one after, any car with an Amberline lot sticker came in free on Fridays. Mill nights. Hank burning his savings so a laid-off man could take his kids somewhere that cost nothing but the dark. Everybody else went up on the board, a quarter down, nothing down, and no man had to say out loud in front of his family that he was broke. Did they ever pay it? Kaz brought up a stationery box full of slit-open envelopes. They paid it for 20 years. $5 in a Christmas card from Columbus. Hank kept everyone. These kept coming after he passed. I hadn't the heart to send them back. The top postmark was 5 months old. Kaz nodded, and Leo read it out loud. Dear Mr. Sobchak, you won't remember me. I was one of the mill night kids, summer of '84. You'd wave my dad through and call him by name like nothing was wrong with anything. I'm in Columbus now, 2 boys of my own. Last month I paid for the family behind us at the pictures, and driving home I finally figured out where I got that from. I hope you're still waving people in. The stand was very quiet. He doesn't know, Leo said. No, Kaz said. Most of them don't. Hank used to say a picture's just light on plywood. What he sold was 2 hours where a broke man's kids didn't know it. Found him that November in his chair at home with the account book square on his lap, like he'd fallen asleep balancing it. Leo almost told him then about the key, about his father, but he was afraid saying it out loud would turn it into nothing. A boy building a story out of a scrap of brass. So he asked the other thing. What about the booth? Kaz went still in a way that was its own answer. That lock's the one Hank hung in 1956, big old railroad pattern, and 2 keys to it in this world, ever. His on his belt, never off it, and no key ever turned up with his effects. I asked him once what happens if his goes in the river. He said there's a second key out there already, where it needs to be. Said the booth would keep till it came back. Kaz looked at Leo. I haven't set foot in that room in 3 winters. I miss it like a house I used to live in. Why? You think you can get in? I don't know, Leo said, which was true. and did not say that the key had been warm against his leg the whole time the old man talked. They worked the rest of the day, the well pump, the breakers, where Hank's tools lived. Before Kaz left, he looked down the field. You know what they mean to do to it. Flat ground next to a 4-lane is worth something to trucks, even when it's worth nothing to people. You buying it threw a wrench into Corrigan's paperwork. Don't expect thanks. 2 days later, a county pickup rolled in, and a tired-eyed man named Prentice laid it out, not unkindly. A demolition order older than Leo's deed, working through the commissioners. He held out a card. Best thing you can do, son, is sign the release and walk off with a story. The kid who owned a movie theater for a month. Leo did not take the card. Did you ever sit out here? He said. Friday nights. You or your folks. That knocked the man off his script. There's a chalkboard inside with about 300 names on it, Leo said. There's a lot of this county on that board. Prentice looked at him a moment, set the card under the wiper blade, and drove off. And Leo noticed he had not answered the question. He did not call the number. He worked, because work was the one thing that had always been open to him when everything else was shut. And every day he found himself at the bottom of the steel stair, coming to himself already on the 3rd tread, with no memory of climbing. Usher waiting at the green door, and every day he took the key out of his pocket and put it back. He told himself he was waiting for the work light, that he wanted Kaz there. Both were true, and neither was the reason. He knew, the way you know rain by the smell before the first drop, that whatever was in that room was going to change what he understood about his own life. If you've come this far with Leo, do a kid who spent his last $27 on a dead theater a favor and tap subscribe, because what's waiting at the top of that steel stair is the reason I'm telling you this story, and we're about to climb it. On the 5th night, he quit pretending. A little after midnight, he pulled his boots on, and Usher was at the foot of the stair before the car door shut. He carried the work light up and switched it on, every rivet and scale of green paint jumping into relief, the big old keyway plain at last. Below him the field lay black and enormous, the screen a paler black against the stars. He took out his father's key, the key that had ridden a cigar box through a funeral and a boyhood, and 6 cold nights in a Cavalier. And this time his hand was steady. It went in smooth the whole way, like it had been cut for this door, and nothing else on earth. He turned. For a heartbeat nothing gave. Then, deep in the old railroad works, something rolled over and caught, and the bolt drew back with a sound he felt in his wrist more than heard. And the door of the Meteor's booth swung inward for the first time in 3 winters. On warm, still air that smelled of machine oil and carbon and dust, and under it all, faint and strange, of vinegar, the way old film smells when it is quietly giving itself back. Usher pushed past his ankles with his tail straight up, the first time Leo had seen it up at all. Leo lifted the work light over the threshold, and the room Hank Sobchak had locked and left came up out of the dark around him. 2 great projectors stood under bedsheets, shrouded like furniture in a closed house. A cot with a folded blanket stood against one wall, and the long wall beside it, from the workbench clear to the ceiling, was covered edge to edge in small square photographs, hundreds upon hundreds, pinned in crooked rows that climbed higher than a man could reach. Leo stood in the doorway with the light in his hand and did not move for a long time. The photographs were people, 45 years of them. Square prints with scalloped edges, Polaroids gone amber, families posed on car hoods, kids asleep in the backs of station wagons, teenagers crowded 6 to a trunk lid, a bride and groom under the screen with speaker cords looped like garland. Hank Sobchak had spent his whole life aiming a camera at the one thing the projector never showed, the lot itself, looking back. Leo climbed onto the workbench with the light and went along the rows like a man reading. In a frame by the window, not pinned but hung, a man held a small boy on his shoulders under a brand new marquee, and on the back in pencil, Teddy, first show, May 1956. And near the middle of the wall, at what would have been eye level from the projectionist's chair, he stopped. A young man on the screen tower catwalk, leaning on the steel rail, squinting into the sun. Leo's hand went to his jacket before his mind did. He held the cigar box photograph up beside its twin. Same day, same light, Same crooked grin he knew from one framed picture and 7 years of half-memory. His father had stood on that tower, 19 years old, and somebody who loved the place had thought him worth keeping on a wall for 30 years. On the bench lay a canvas-bound ledger, and it was not an account book. It was the booth book, dates and reels and weather in Hank's blunt pencil, and folded among the pages, people. Leo turned to the summer he was 7 and found the entry by feel. The way you find a light switch in a house you lived in once. June 25, 93. Walt C. brought his boy up, 7 years old, set him on the stool for the changeover, and he hit the cue on his second look. Gave Walt the booth key back for keeps, so the boy will always have a door. Leo sat down on the cot, with the book in his lap. Under the bench, in a cigar box the twin of his own, lay letters in his father's handwriting, rubber-banded, the last one dated February of 1994. The writing gone slow and careful, and one line in it that Leo read until the words came apart. If anything happens to me, hold the door for Leo. That was where Kaz found him at 7 in the morning, sitting in the open booth with the cat asleep against his leg. The old man came up the stairs, saw the door standing wide, and took his cap off the way men do walking into church. The second key, he said, where it needed to be. Leo held out the ledger and the photograph and its twin off the wall, and told him all of it, the porch, the crates, the box set out square so the ledger would be clean. Kaz listened with his jaw working. Then he said, "Your dad hung around the Millgate summers, 69 to about 76, and Hank put a broom in his hand and then a reel. After Teddy, Hank never let another boy touch that changeover. Your father was the first," he looked at Leo, "and you were the last." He pulled the bed sheets off the projectors then, and taught the way Hank must have taught, hands first. 2 machines, because a movie came in reels that ran 20 minutes each, and the whole art was the handoff. You watched the top right corner of the picture for the cue mark, a scorched dot most people never saw in their lives. First dot, you started the second projector rolling. Second dot, 8 seconds later, you threw the changeover, sound and picture together. And if you did it right, 400 people down in the dark never felt the seam. The pale scars on Kaz's forearms were from the old carbon arc lamps, 2 burning rods you trimmed by hand while they spat. "A projectionist earns his light," Kaz said. That was Hank's line. Under the bench sat a squat steel cabinet, riveted like a ship, with a padlock the booth key did not fit. "Hank's fire safe," Kaz said. "Film vault habit from the old days. Keys wherever his went. They let it be." The county did not. On the 11th day, a certified letter came to the ticket booth. Demolition order, structures condemned, execution in 21 days unless stayed. Public comment before the Corliss County Commissioners, 2nd Monday, 6:30. Leo read it twice and looked at the safe. Kaz brought the bolt cutters up himself. Hank would sooner it opened than burned, he said, and cut it. Inside were 3 things. A banded stack of bills with one word penciled on the wrapper, seed. More money than Leo had ever seen in one place. A folder of receipts and inspection letters. The tower's whole maintained life, ending with an engineer's report from 1998 that used the word sound 3 times, and a flat film can, hand-lettered. Walt and the boys, 73. Under the money lay an envelope, to the one the key walked in with. Leo opened it standing up. "If you're reading this, the key came home, and I don't need to know your name to know you. The county's paper only ever owned the taxes. The Meteor belongs to whoever it let in. This is seed money for the next feature. Light it up. Nobody watches from the road. HS." That night they laced the old reel through the machine and ran it low against the booth wall. And Leo watched his father at 19, laughing in silent black and white, botching a changeover and getting cuffed with a cap for it, doing it again, getting it right, looking straight into Hank's camera with his whole life ahead of him. Dust drifted through the beam. Leo did not wipe his face, and Kaz did not look at him, which is how men sit together in a booth. Then they went to work, because 21 days is not grief time. They wrote letters. Every address in Hank's stationery box that could still be read, 57 of them. In Leo's careful hand at the concession counter, night after night. The Meteor goes before the commissioners on the 2nd Monday. If this place ever waved you in, now is the time. Sophie Rona taped one by her register and fed Leo while he wrote. On the 4th night, Headlights slowed on the berm and sat there, engine ticking. A station wagon, a woman at the wheel, 2 kids asleep under coats. Leo walked out the gate the way he had been told a man used to, and waved her through. He parked her under the tower where the light was soft, brought blankets from the stand, and asked nothing. In the morning she tried to hand him $4, and he pushed it back with one finger. "Someday you'll be doing good," he said, "and somebody will look the way you look right now." Buy their lunch. She looked at him a long moment like she was memorizing something, and drove out slow. On Monday, 3 dump trucks and a paving crew turned in off the river road, and a silver-haired woman in a crew cap stepped down and looked at the field with her hands on her hips. "The winter I was 17, she said. "I slept in my car behind St. Casimir's. Hank put me in that ticket booth, paid me double what it was worth, and kept me in school." Bernadette Ptak, folks say Birdie. She nodded at the lanes. "Ptak Paving, where do you want them?" It was Birdie, at the counter that week, who laid out the arithmetic that would save them. "A picture show never lived on the picture," she said. "The distributor takes the fat end of the gate, first weeks especially. What kept Hank's lights on was this counter. Popcorn costs a dime and sells for $1.50, and a car of 4 buys drinks all night. The screen fills the lot. The stand pays the taxes, so the field lanes, the stand, and clean restrooms came first, and Kaz sourced a xenon lamp so no one would have to trim burning rods, and an FM transmitter for the car radios, because only 41 of the 178 posts still had speakers worth saving. The hearing was in the county annex, 40 folding chairs, and better than 80 people, the overflow standing down the hall. Prentice read the order in a flat voice, and the Corrigan woman sat with her folder squared on her knees. Then Leo stood up with Hank's maintenance file and the 1998 engineer's letter, and after him the room did what he had not planned. A man rose and said he proposed to his wife in row 7 in 1977, and she was sitting right here. A retired shop teacher said Hank hired him out of juvenile trouble in 1966 and stood by him when nobody else would put his name on paper. Millmen stood one after another and named the summers of the sticker, 84 and 85. And one man had driven from Columbus with his 2 boys and read out the letter he had mailed to a dead man 5 months ago. Leo spoke last and kept it short. "Mr. Sobchak painted 6 words on his wall in 1963, he said. "Nobody watches from the road. I'm asking the county to come inside." The commissioners conferred behind their hands, tabled the order pending an independent inspection, and gave him 90 days. 2 weeks later, Corrigan withdrew its offer, flat ground being available elsewhere, and the woman with the folder never came back. The workday was a Saturday and 60 people came. Bruno Camix, the scrap dealer, who had priced that screen tower's steel in his head for 10 years, showed up with his crane truck and reset the marquee letters himself and would not take $1. "Chalk me on the board," he said, and they did. The Good For It board took its first new names in 20 years. Prentice came off duty in jeans and gloves, and when Leo raised an eyebrow, he finally answered the question. "Row 9, he said. "My father's Pontiac, every Friday of 1981. His mother came on a weekday evening, alone, and walked the field with her arms crossed like the wind was on her. Leo took her up the steel stair and showed her the wall and the ledger line and the letters, and she held the 2 photographs of Walt side by side for a long time. He used to slow down out here, she said. Whenever we drove the river road, he never said one word." She looked at the booth around her, the cot, the door. "You're not the easy one, Leo. You were the one nobody carried. There's a difference, and I knew it, and it was easier not to." She left before dark, and it was not fixed, but it was said. A week after, Rick's truck stopped at the gate long enough to set down Walt's toolbox from the garage rafters. No note. Inside, chalk-marked wrenches worn to the shine of use, and taped in the lid a blue Meteor ticket stub, roll number faded, torn in 1973. The Meteor reopened the first Friday of May, 2005. The water was certified, the panel new, the tower inspected sound and writing, and the marquee carried every one of its letters for the first time in years. "Welcome back, Carlo," and under it, "First show free." Cars backed up the river road like a photograph from 1961. and half the men who had called it the ghost lot were in the line. And one of them said it out loud. The ghost lot's showing pictures, and it sounded like affection now. Sophie Rona closed the lunch counter early and brought papyrogis for the stand, and they sold out before the cartoon ended. Usher walked the rows ahead of the lights like a foreman on inspection. Leo wore his father's watch, cleaned and running, and it said 8:41 when the neon arrow caught, and the whole valley turned its head. Just before the feature, one car idled out on the berm, headlights off, the way cars used to. Leo walked the whole way out and waved it in. Up in the booth, he watched the top right corner of the picture, and when the first cue mark blinked, he started the second machine. And at the second mark, he threw the changeover clean. And 400 people down in the dark never felt the seam, which was the whole job, and always had been. The brass key rode on his belt, never off it. There had always been a second key out there, where it needed to be. It had just taken 10 years to walk back in. The second season, in the summer of 2006, a car came up the river road at dusk riding low, packed to the windows with everything a person owns when the locks get changed behind them. The kid at the wheel was maybe 18, and he asked, not quite looking at anybody, whether there was any work. Leo looked at him the way Sophie Rona had once looked across a counter, and the way a gray cat had once looked around a corner. He bought the kid's supper at the stand and did not chalk it anywhere. "Come on," Leo said. "I'll show you the booth." I think about Hank Sobchak more than I expected to when I first heard a story like this one. He never got to know whose pocket the second key was in, and he built for that stranger anyway, the way somebody once built a playground under a screen for children who hadn't been born yet. Most of us lock our doors against what might come. A few people cut a second key, and the quiet ones, the easy ones, the ones nobody carries, tend to be the ones who notice which kind of door they walked through and go on to hold it. This is a work of true-to-life fiction. All names, characters, places, and events are creative inventions, and any resemblance to actual persons or businesses is coincidental.